Greetings and welcome back to the lab. This is take 2 on the flip clock. Unfortunately, last night I went to sleep, and when I woke up in the middle of the night and looked over, I couldn't see anything. I thought maybe the light was just really dim under the studio/lab lights. Ultimately, I'm just in the corner of the garage. I will eventually get the lighting all figured out. But so it didn't work. And so what I want to do, I have kind of a plan here. I did a little bit of thinking, and what I came up with is I'm going to build another one of these little circuits on here. But the difference is I'm going to take the LEDs, I have these bags of LEDs handy for another project that I keep teasing, but I got to get through all these projects first before I can start concentrating on that one. But these LEDs, this might not be the right bag, but I'll pull one out and show you. These are diffused, I pulled out two. Diffused LEDs. Let me kind of get that where you can see the, against the background. They are not clear. They do change color, but they're frosted, so it will disperse the light a bit more. The plan, let's see, are these even going to be part of it? No, I picked the ones that aren't going to be part of it. But I have this circuit board here, this snippet of a circuit board. I have cut, there are traces here that run between these two lines. I've cut them. Ultimately, these two tracks are going to be one side of the circuit, one positive, one negative. The LEDs are going to go on this side of the board, and what I'm ultimately going to do is I'm going to sort of put them on like that, but I'm going to then fold them down so they take as little space as possible, and then I will, because I can get that and then I can get another one right next to it, I'm hoping that will just make sort of a line of light. And I need to take some measurements against the clock to figure out how many of which type of LED, which color LED. I'm going to put all that together, and then we're going to be into the stage of trying to figure out the brightness, and I think I have a plan for that. So next time you see me, I will have assembled all of this into a string of lights, and I'll be ready to take on the next step. Okay, I'm back. A couple of little problems occurred along the way, and among other things, I'm almost out of solder. I'm going to have to find my other reels of solder if I need to do too much more. But my solution I had for figuring out what resistor was to use my Resistor Substitution Box. And I've actually got it hooked up right now. The clock is on, and I've got the power coming out of it that was going up to the original board. I've now disconnected the old board, kind of took it apart a little bit. Actually, now I can see my LEDs trying to escape from the bag where you can't tell what color they are just by looking. So I need to seal that up. But so it's powered up right now, is what I'm getting at. And I've got it turned up to absolute maximum on this substitution box, which is 10 mega ohms, which, if we're trying to drop, say, 1.5 volts, let's get the calculator, because these are going to require about 3.5 volts. So if we want to drop 1.5 volts divided by 10 million equals 1.5 times 10 to the negative 7th, or what is that, nanoamps? So drawing very, very little across that resistor. But ultimately, if I now switch and start reducing the resistance, eventually it's just barely turned on, but it may be hard to see. So let me kill the lights, and I'm going to leave them off, and you'll get to see part of the problem I'm having. As I keep coming down, they get a little bit brighter, and now I've hit the limit on the high side, which is 15K. So I'm going to switch to low, which drops it to 10K, and now you can see the lights are on, and actually 10K may be almost perfect. Just to show you though, these things can get blindingly bright. I'm not going to leave it there for very long, but I made a light bar is what I did. Unfortunately, if I turn the, let me go back up to 10K now, just to leave it running. If I turn the lights back on, having just turned the lights back on, sorry, multiple takes here, you can see that I've got two LEDs here that aren't lit up, and my thinking was I was going to do the light bar here in green, and then these two over here were going to be my yellow lights for the calendar side, but it took me a little thinking to realize what happened. What's happened is I'm trying to power all of these LEDs off the same voltage. The greens turn on before the yellows. The greens require less voltage to switch on than the yellows do. So what I actually need to do is rewire this slightly so that I can get two resistors in there. One resistor will go to the green and drop a certain amount of voltage to get to that. The other resistor will drop to the yellow and allow them to turn on. And then actually with that, I can use this substitution box to get approximately equal brightness. And I want it to be somewhat dim. I don't want it to be too bright, because ultimately during the daytime with the lights on in the room, I can read the clock, no problem. But at nighttime, I don't want it to be so bright that it keeps me awake at night. Now, originally what I wanted to do was to throw a potentiometer in there, just basically an adjustable brightness knob, but my calculations show that I need something like a 25 ohm potentiometer, and being that we're in the middle of COVID-19, going out and getting one locally is pretty much out of the question, and I don't happen to have one in my stock of all my stuff, so I could order one online, but ultimately I need to adjust the brightness of both the calendar and the clock. So at this point, it probably makes more sense to use the resistor substitution box to determine what resistor I need. And once I figure that out, I have a very large selection of resistors to work with. So I can just take from here what I need and plug it into the circuit, and then stick the whole circuit into the box. Now, I don't know if I'm going to be able to finish this off today. I'm going to try to get a certain amount done, but I have something I have to do this afternoon. So I think at this point I'm going to wrap this up as take 2 part 1, and I'll come back to this tomorrow and update you once I have a chance to get back to this and try and actually work on it. So I appreciate you checking this video out. Appreciate you hanging around with me. I know I skipped a whole bunch, but I didn't want to make it a really long video, and honestly I probably spent a good hour with planning and trying to implement this. I got a couple of pictures. I'll show you some pictures on how I ultimately ended up cutting a new piece, because remember I said I was going to use this piece here. What I ended up determining was that this piece wasn't going to work, because I'd have to wedge it way in here, and it wasn't going to, let me see if I even have that in frame, yeah, way in here, and it wouldn't have any support. So I needed a bigger piece. The circuit itself is just on the edge of this piece here. The rest of it is just for support, so it can sit down in here and rest on here. Hoping that's in frame, yeah. So you can see that it'll basically just cover this area, and then there's one light sticking off the board, because when I put the board in, it's limited by a stop here, an angled bracket. But I can wedge one of these LEDs underneath, and that should help spread across. I can actually kind of see here for myself that I pretty much have enough. Yeah, that lines up nicely. And so that light bar should then more evenly shine down into the area instead of those two little shafts of light. So I think I'm on the right track here. This is take 2. It's possible I could do all of this and be completely wrong, but I'm going to think positive here and keep working on it, and then I'm going to have to take off in a little bit. Well, did you think I was just going to leave you like that? Ultimately, I did a little bit more thinking, and there will be a part 2 at some point, but this was successful enough that I can actually put it back together, and tonight I can enjoy my clock in my bedroom and be able to sleep, and then if I wake up in the middle of the night, turn over and look and be able to see it. So I've put the board in. This should give you a better idea what I was talking about. There's nothing actually making contact up on here, so I'm not worried about that. This is the extra wire hanging out from the power supply and seems to have gotten tangled on my soldering iron. Let's see if we can pull that out. I've unplugged the soldering iron at this point. I went back in, I put the resistor on there, so right now if I were to turn this on, it gives me a nice gentle green light, which is what I was looking for. Why green? Because I believe the reason I chose green originally is because that's what the original color was with those neon lights, those neon bulbs. I'm sure somebody's going to say, oh, you can still find them, they're over here, and I appreciate that, but ultimately I just wanted to get this back together and functioning the way I need it to function. And take 2, part 2 will be me going back. I think I know exactly what's wrong with the yellow side. Ultimately I may have burned out the lights because I was testing against the green, and I may have pushed too much voltage into the yellows. I've now separated the yellow from the green on the positive side, but the negative is still common running across. I've put in a resistor. I've attached the cable from the power supply. That should be able to run across. Worst case scenario, I'll run it out this way. You're going to find out in a second because I'm going to try and put this on and reassemble this. Okay, that's got that. Now I get the screws for those. Oops. Knocked over my, or almost knocked over my stool. Let me pour these out. I forgot to put the insulator in there. Silly me. I need a better receptacle for the little parts. I'm trying to think where that insulator went. Yeah, I need to, unfortunately, take this back apart again. Alright, we are now officially to the point where I can show you this thing working. I gotta find the right plug to plug in instead of reconnecting my soldering iron. Oh, that looks beautiful from here. Slightly off, but let me go ahead and kill the lights, and hopefully you can see a soft green glow right here. I could go kill some more lights. I could stand to clean the inside of that thing. Wow. But that's a job for another day. I'm happy to say I've got a soft, even green light. I'm just hoping it's not too bright, but I can hook this back up and go to sleep tonight, and if I wake up, I'll see, I'll be able to see what it says on the clock. So with that, I'm going to wrap this one up until take 2, part 2. See y'all later.